Thanks, Dogger. And thanks to Young Jains and Jain Vegans for organizing all this and for everybody who's helped put it together. There's a lot of people a big team that did this. I think you're going to thank everybody at the end probably, right?
SCVP as well.
SCVP. And I should mention SCVP. My aunt is actually a Jain Sadhvi with Viraitan. And I've also volunteered at the hospital in Bihar, actually myself. Okay, so my name is Dr. Tushar Mehta. I did my residency in what we call family medicine, but general practice, what you call over here, so I'm a GP. And I work mostly in the emergency department in Canada nowadays. So what you guys call A&E, that's where my normal work is. But I also do a lot of work I do some international work. I teach people about vegan diet and health. And I volunteer for various organizations like environmental organizations and animals and things like this. But I became very interested in vegan nutrition because there's obviously the social justice aspect about helping animals, but also the nutritional aspect, which very much interests me as a doctor. So that's how I got interested in this. So here's a few famous vegans over here. Mike Tyson, Serena Williams, she's been winning some golds and some Wimbledons. Dave Scott, who's one of the best Ironman athletes in the world, and very famous, and he won all of his Ironmans as a vegan. And Bill Clinton was vegan for some time. He's still almost vegan in order to reverse some of his heart disease. There are some pretty famous fighters who have been vegan as well. And Serena, we got her again. And we have some other friends who are also vegan, right? And they seem to get enough protein. All right. I want to acknowledge some of the people that I learned from and that helped me get my information. So people like Michael Greger, and there's some websites here, nutritionfacts.org. Jack Norris is another great person. His veganhealth.org is one of his websites. Ginny Messina and Jack Norris together wrote a book called Vegan Life, okay? And, Vegan for Life. It's over here, but there's a few copies I think that'll be sold afterwards. And it's a great one for people to learn from. It's a great one to have on your shelf. And Neil Bernard, PCRM. So these slides will be available, so you can look at these websites afterwards too, because they're great places to get more information. Towards Ahimsa is the organization I work with in Canada, where we teach about nonviolence, as well as running children's camps about nonviolence. We run Jain camps for kids over there, all right? So does everybody know what vegan is? Some people here are already vegan, but what is vegan? What's the definition of veganism? So for those people who may not know, I'll just say it's a diet that is free of animal products. That's what vegan diet is. When vegan diet is no animal products. So no animal flesh, no animal secretions. So the main secretion is milk. Milk is a secretion that comes from an animal. And no animal ova, or eggs, that come from animals, right? That's pretty much. And also there's some things like honey and things like that some vegans find a bit controversial, but may exclude things like honey as well. So it means a diet that comes 100% from plants, okay? Plants and maybe plants and fungi as well, okay? Because mushrooms could be included. And when we talk about a vegan lifestyle that goes beyond the diet, we talk about excluding things like wool, silk, leather, feathers, and all kinds of other things that contain animals or may harm animals in the process, okay? So what do vegans eat, all right? Let's just talk about the 4 food groups. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and legumes. And then we can also add nuts, seeds, and some oils, okay? Now, I'm gonna talk briefly, I always include this slide in my presentations, and this one says, Mr. Iyengar practiced yoga all his life and died yesterday at the age of 96. And Mr. Singh drank whiskey all of his life and died recently at the age of 99. And therefore the moral of the story is that whiskey gives you a 3-year edge over yoga, right? Now who here thinks that's true? Now these guys both live pretty long times, right? But the point here is that anything can happen. Like there's variability amongst the population. Some people are gonna live a long time. Everybody has an uncle who smoked cigarettes or smoked bidis, and they lived till they were 100 years old. And they did nothing for their health. They drank and they smoked and they lived till 100. Everybody has some uncle like that. But that doesn't mean, that smoking and drinking is good for you, okay? And this is where science comes in. This is why we need science. And this is a hard thing for people to understand about science. When it comes to science about medications like blood pressure pills or diabetes pills or, treatments for diseases, medical science is made out of percentages, okay? If you take a blood pressure pill, it doesn't mean that you won't get a heart attack. It means you reduce your percentage chance of getting a heart attack. okay? If you eat a proper diet, it means you reduce the percentage chance of certain things and increase the chance of, let's say, living disease-free or living longer. But it doesn't guarantee anything, okay? But it increases percentages. And that's what we look at when we're talking about vegan diet or medical science in general, all right? So what we do in order to study medications or study diet is we look at groups of people, and let's say we're studying a medication, we have, let's say, people on this side of the room may be given a placebo, and this side of the room may be given a medication to study, let's say, blood pressure or any kind of problem that somebody may have. And then we watch them for a few years. Depending on the problem, you maybe have to watch them for a few days if it's a problem that's very instantaneous, or you may have to watch them for a few years or a long time if it's something like we want to see who's getting a heart attack. We have to wait a long time, and then you can see what percentage gets a heart attack on this side and this side. And when we're comparing the two groups, we can't have like one group is all young people, one group is older, or one group is more female, one group is more male, or one group is rich and the other group is poor. You know, they have to be, and one group is smokers or non-smokers. We have to look at all those things and make sure that roughly they're pretty equal. And if there are some things that might not be equal, then we can also statistically adjust. We know that smoking causes a certain number more of heart attacks, so we can adjust statistically, you know, those kind of factors. And in general, what you need to do for most things is you need to have large groups of people. You can't just have like 100 people compared to 100 people. We like to have 10,000 people compared to 10,000 people, or 50,000 people compared to 50,000 people. Depending on the types of things we want to study, you need those kind of numbers, and you need to watch people for a long time and see what happens to them over a long time. In most cases, depending on the disease, maybe sometimes a smaller group or shorter time is okay, but for a lot of things we need to actually watch for a long time. So if we're going to study about like drinking and the effect of drinking, or smoking, the effect of smoking, or the effect of diet, then those are the kind of things we need. So normally I do this presentation, and I go through a lot of research studies. I show examples of different studies on heart disease and things like that. I'm not going to do that today because I want to go a little bit faster. But I want to emphasize that everything I talk about today, I have a video online, and if you look at my video online from 2014, you can download all the references. So if I say something about heart disease or cancer or breast cancer or obesity, you can find the references that I'm using, the scientific studies that I'm using, and you can download that reference document and look up those studies online. Okay, because I don't want to, everybody says everything on the internet, and they never say where they're getting their information from. But the most important thing is where are we getting our information from, and then you should have the ability to see where I'm getting my information from. Okay? All right. So let's talk about the health of Indian people. Mostly we're Indian here, okay? And what are Indian people suffering from these days? What do Indian people get a lot of? Diabetes, heart attacks, right? Those are the kind of things that we get the most, right? What else? Cancers, that's right, and you sometimes get a surprising amount. And even though people are vegetarian, people are getting a lot of these diseases, because we're sort of hearing that, vegetarianism is supposed to be better, but sometimes for Indian people, it may not be, it doesn't seem to always provide the advantage that we think it's going to be. Everybody's on high blood pressure, cholesterol medications, cancer, diabetes, strokes, heart attacks. It's very, very common, okay? And dairy is one of the main causes, because most people probably in the audience that we have right now, most people are probably vegetarian or vegan, right? But, a lot of times, Gujarati people, who here is Gujarati? Yeah, right? There's a lot of people who are Gujarati, right? So most Gujaratis that I come across are vegetarian, but they still have a lot of dairy in their diets, especially in India. Okay, so when you study vegetarians over here, they don't eat meat, but it doesn't mean that they drink more dairy. But if you study vegetarians about the Indian population or in India, a lot of people who eat meat, they're kind of poor. In many cases, just on average, right? The non-sort of Gujarati population has, in the non-Jain population, they're a little bit more poor. And, non-Brahmins and stuff like that. So they tend to eat meat, but they don't eat very much because it's very expensive. And they don't also drink a lot of milk because it's very expensive. The vegetarians, however, they may not be eating any meat, they may not eat eggs, but they do have lots of milk. And essentially, when it comes to the human body, as far as our health is concerned, milk is liquid meat because it has animal protein and animal fat. Those are the two main things. It has animal protein and animal fat. And the animal protein, if it's going in your body, it has the same effect, whether it's from milk or eggs or other meat. Generally speaking, it's going to have the same effect. And the animal fat, which is the saturated fat that's produced in animals, it's pretty much the same whether it's coming from meat or eggs or milk. It's very similar. Okay, so it's going to, in our body, going to have a similar effect and be, have similar pros and cons. Okay. So what are the big diseases that are caused by meat, dairy, and eggs? We talk about heart disease, strokes, cancers of the colon, prostate, breast, obesity, diabetes. Okay. And while I'm talking about this, I know that I'm talking right now about diet and I'm talking about veganism, but I don't want to ignore the other things that are also very important for our health. Okay. There's a great study that's done in Europe, okay, it's called, it's a very large study called EPIC, European Prospective Investigation into Cancer, and they're studying all kinds of factors that are related to cancer, but other diseases as well. And they found, in one big part of the study that low meat intake is correlated with a longer lifespan, especially when you're having whole grains, like and whole plant foods. But exercise is also very important, not smoking is very important, and being slim, body mass index, BMI means your body mass index, so being slim. So those are four major factors in staying healthy and living long. Okay. All right. Let's start a little bit talking about heart disease. There's this guy named Dean Ornish, a very famous researcher in the United States, and what he did was he took a bunch of people who had known heart disease, they had angina, they had a lot of blockages in their artery, and he put them on a vegan diet, but a very special vegan diet, so there was no animal products at all. But also was very low fat, extremely low fat. All were whole foods. Whole foods means no processed food. So orange juice is a processed food. It's not the whole orange, but you can't drink orange juice if you're part of his study. You can eat oranges, you can eat apples, but not apple juice. There was like no sugar, no white flour, it has to be whole grain flour. Okay, and so on and so forth. So everything was pretty much whole foods, very low fat, and vegan. There was no animal products. He also got people to do some exercise and meditation and things like that. And what he found basically was that the arteries, so this is an example of an artery in the heart, over here. Okay, that's an artery in the heart. And this is clicker I can use. Let's try this. Oh yeah, this is very small. But I'll skip that. This artery has a lot of blockages, you can see. Now, when they put this person on the low-fat, vegan, whole food diet, and they checked that same person with an angiogram the year later, that person's artery opened up. And this was the first time that it was shown that heart disease could be reversed. Before that, the cholesterol and everything that builds up in the arteries, which is actually in the wall of the artery, it's not just like a coating or anything like that, is thought to be permanent. They thought they could never reverse that. So this is the first time that ever showed that it could be reversed. Now, sometimes if you have calcium buildup or some other factors, then you maybe not be able to reverse it. But if the plaques are soft and there's no calcium in them, they tended to reverse in most cases for these people. And the people who were in the other group that were doing some exercise a little bit and just following the standard recommendations of the American Heart Association for people who had heart disease, most of their heart disease got worse. But these guys mostly got better. Okay? And then they had less heart attacks. They had some heart attacks, but some people needed surgery or had a heart attack. But mostly they didn't, compared to the other group, which many more of them did. More than double the number in the other group had heart attacks and stuff like that. But for these guys, they reversed. So this is really interesting. Another person, Dr. Esselstyn, did the same kind of study, not including exercise, meditation, or anything, but just the dietary component, found the same results, that heart disease would reverse. Okay? Other blood vessel diseases like erectile dysfunction, strokes. Sometimes people have blood vessel disease inside their legs and blockages of arteries in other parts of their body. These things you can also perhaps reverse or at least protect yourself from. Okay. Here's a guy. He's one of the world's strongest men. He won the Germany's Strongest Man competition. He's broken all kinds of world records. He's totally vegan. He's got his master's degree or something like that in engineering. His name is Patrick Babounian. And he says that, I just lift weights and do all this stuff because I want to show people that you can be vegan and be very, very strong. Okay. Let's talk about cancer. Now, again, I'm not going to show the studies, but you can download them. But when we look at some of these big studies in Europe and America, in Europe they have this EPIC study, and in especially the group that's in UK. And in America, they study Seventh-day Adventists, which is a religious group that are a very similar culture between them, similar behavior and and socioeconomic status and all kinds of things, but a percentage of them are vegan, some percentage are vegetarian, because they emphasize this vegetarianism in their culture. And it shows that, generally it shows that the people who have this vegetarian or vegan diet have a lower percentage of cancer. Now, the percentage lower, maybe 15, 20, 25% lower. It's like around that range. It's not magical. It's not like people who are vegan are not getting cancer, but it seems to be like, at least in some of these people who've been vegan for a few years, not necessarily vegan since they were born, that there is a lower percentage of cancer. So it's not like you're bulletproof or Superman, but it means that, let's say in the UK, if there was going to be 50,000 people who got cancer this year, if you can reduce that by, let's say, 20%, then that's pretty good, right? Breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer. Let's talk a little bit about this. So total cancer incidence, this is just an example. I'll just show you what the study looks like. Cancer incidence in British vegetarians, updated analysis of 4,998 incident cancers in a cohort of 32,000 meat eaters, 8,000 fish eaters, 18,000 vegetarians, and 2,246 vegans. And they watched these people who were, for 15 years. They found that, most of the people who were like semi-vegetarian or vegetarian because they had dairy or just eating fish, they had like maybe 12% lower cancer, but the vegans had like 19% lower cancer, and they did a little bit better. Okay, so it's not magic, but it makes a difference. And there's very few things in medicine that we can do, that we can give somebody that makes that kind of a difference, that you can actually reduce cancer by 20%. And this is without any medications, and it's for free, and there's no side effects. Okay, because we spend millions and tens of millions of dollars or pounds or whatever on all kinds of screening and stuff like that, and very few things result in actually lower death from cancer. Prostate cancer. I just want to emphasize, I'm going to just review some of the studies that show that those eating animal products, meat, those drinking milk in one of the physician's health study, and those eating eggs had increased death from prostate cancer, especially from milk and eggs. They seem to be big offenders, and prostate and red meat. And vegans, in one recent big study that came out of the UK, showed that they had about 35% less prostate cancer for the men. So again, it's not zero, but it's a big difference. It's a protection that people have. Okay. Breast cancer, and there's various studies showing that meat, especially red meat and processed meat, increases breast cancer, as well as dairy. Dairy is also one of the factors that seems to increase breast cancer. Okay, and so excluding that from the diet is beneficial. Now, what about one of the concerns? What vegan food do you hear about that says, oh, men shouldn't eat this because it's going to affect them, and women shouldn't eat this and maybe cause them cancer? What's
soya?
Soya. You hear that all the time, right? So you hear that everywhere in the internet. But so is soya dangerous for the breast? Okay, and basically the studies basically show that in the Eastern countries, studies done in Eastern countries, where people have a lot of soya, they have higher amounts of soya, and they have it for most of their life, that the women in those countries have about 20 to 50% less breast cancer in the population that's having the highest category of soya consumption, compared to those people who are having the lowest amount of soy consumption in their diet. Okay? So there's a big difference there. It's quite significant. So soy seems to be protective in multiple studies coming from Eastern countries. The Western studies done in Western countries didn't really show a difference, but the problem was that in the Western countries they were eating very, very little soy. So it didn't really show to have any. It showed there was a little bit of a benefit, but it wasn't statistically that significant. It wasn't. There's something called statistical significance, and it didn't meet that criteria. But where they were having large amounts of soy for their whole life, those people had protection. Now, people worry about estrogen, basically, in soy, right? They worry about estrogens. Now, this is a big myth, okay? It's a big myth that they say that there's these estrogens in soy. I'm gonna get a little bit more into that, but basically soy does not contain real estrogen. Okay? And now there's also people who have had breast cancer. They're breast cancer survivors, and then they're told not to have soy by their doctors, right? But again, the doctors just don't really understand what soy really is. There's 3 studies about women who've had breast cancer and studying them afterwards. And they're not huge populations, but they're having about, let's say, 5,000, 4,000, 5,000 breast cancer survivors. And it was found in every one of those studies that the women who were eating the most soy had about maybe 30% less recurrence and less death from the cancer at approximately 4 or 5 years after the treatment started, after the diagnosis and treatment. So, I mean, going forward, we don't know what's going to happen to them, but at that point in time, at least 4 or 5 years later, they had less recurrence and less death at that time. And it seems to be protective. Now, if we get more studies like this in higher numbers, eventually maybe we will be able to use that as one of the treatments for breast cancer. We may not be at that point where we can recommend it to all women who've had breast cancer, but it seems very optimistic that it's giving some protection and very optimistic also that it's safe. And certainly if I had a relative or family member who unfortunately would suffer from this kind of disease, I'd probably tell them you should eat a lot of soy. Because so far, that's pretty strong, even though it may not be 100% conclusive as of yet. Now, gastrointestinal cancers, cancers of the colon and gastric cancers, they're more correlated with meats and eggs and stuff like that. Somehow milk doesn't have as much of an effect on things like colon cancer and whatnot, but keeping in mind that, avoiding meats and those kind of things offers some protection from cancer of the GI tract. Colon cancer is one of them. And the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is part of the United Nations, has, which makes recommendations to all kinds of health things, last year came out with a declaration that they consider red meat and processed meat. So red meat is like lamb and bacon and flesh of pigs and lambs and cows. That's all considered like red meat. And processed meat, so even things like chicken nuggets and those sandwich meats that are processed and all that stuff, those are processed meats. They're all considered as carcinogens for the colon. Now, they cause other cancers too. They've been implicated in many different studies, but this is very, very old data, and this conservative organization, the United Nations and the WHO, is finally picking up on it. Okay. We talked about vegans and vegetarians living longer, okay, so I'm not going to go through the studies there, but there's like maybe studies that show that they have like a 1 year, 2 year life expectancy advantage, all right? Now, over time, I think that advantage is going to get smaller and smaller, because the way we as doctors are we're getting better at treating cancers, we're getting better at treating heart disease. The way we treat heart disease now compared to 20 years ago, compared to 30 and 40 years ago is radically different. So when it comes to longevity, maybe at some point people who eat meat and animal products will be able to live almost as long. There may not be that much of a difference, but the advantage will be that people won't have, if they're avoiding these diseases, there won't be as many medications, won't be as many surgeries, won't be as many angioplasties, won't be as many disabilities that come from, and various cancer treatments people don't have to go through. It's a lower percentage, so people have healthier lives, even though the medical system is able to keep people longer despite having these bad diseases. Obesity, people who become vegan, even if they're not taking care of their diet that much, tend to be slimmer than those people who are eating dairy products, and compared especially to those people who are having dairy products plus meat products as well, okay? And there's a lot of diseases that go along with obesity, okay? When people have more obesity, then they have more heart disease, more cancer, menstrual problems, arthritis, knee problems, back problems. Those are big deals, knee problems and back problems. So many people have those kind of things. So if people are very overweight, they're going to get more of those knee problems and back problems. It's not like you can completely avoid them if you're slim, but it makes a big difference. It's one of the things that makes a big difference. So what I always tell people also who are vegan is that, or vegetarian or anything, even if you're vegan, you still have to watch out for fried foods and sugar and cola and candies and all those kind of things. Junk food is still junk food, even if it's vegan, right? Being vegan can help you. We know these Indian sweets, right? I think I have a picture, but a lot of those vegan, those Indian sweets, they may be vegan, but even just being near them, you can get like a heart attack, or like something like that. It can happen. You can smell it, and something will happen to you. All right. So diabetes. People who are vegan have the least amount of diabetes. When they do studies, when they compare vegans versus people who are vegetarian versus people who just eat fish versus versus people who are semi-vegetarian and compared to regular meat eaters, the vegans have the least amount of diabetes. Again, diabetes leads to kidney problems, leads to eye problems, leads to heart problems and other blood vessel problems, everything like that. So if we reduce our diabetes, we can probably reduce the complications from diabetes as well, all right? And that's a big deal, because diabetes is a really big deal in our community, in so many communities. people are taking so many medications, and then eventually they're taking insulin and all this kind of stuff, right? And I know a few diabetics who, now they say, some people say that if you go vegan, you can eliminate diabetes altogether. That's not necessarily true. For some people who have a mild or moderate form of diabetes, type 2, we're talking about type 2 diabetes here, okay? They can maybe reverse their diabetes completely if they're on a low-fat, whole-food, plant-based diet. So no sugar, sweets, junk foods, and they're just generally low-fat, or even if you really want to get rid of that diabetes, reverse heart disease, you have to go very, very low-fat. It'll get even more of an effect. But even just by being vegan and having a reasonably healthy diet, we're going to have a lot of benefit there. And but some people have very strong forms of diabetes because of genetics or whatever it is. They might not eliminate the diabetes, but you're going to get better control. Maybe 1 or 2 medications, and all your diabetes is in very nice control. Compared to having to take 2 and 3 medications and your blood sugar is still running high. So it's a very good thing. Okay. Vegans have lower blood pressure. Again, blood pressure contributes to kidney and heart disease and all this. Okay. Yep. And even and I also want to state that for most of these things, if people are partially vegan, generally these studies show that those people who are semi-vegetarian or vegetarian have some benefits, right? And then vegans will have maybe 1 step of greater benefit. Dementia, which is Alzheimer's disease, which happens less in the Indian community, but it's still very important. There's studies that show that if you have high cholesterol in your middle of your life, most people here are kind of, there's a lot of people here are middle age, right? 40s and 50s or whatever. If you have high cholesterol in the middle of your life, then those people have more of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, when they were in their 80s, okay? So a protective factor, again, vegans have lower cholesterol. This could be a protective factor. Now we have to eventually wait till vegans become 80 years old and have been vegan for a long time to see what percentages of dementia and Alzheimer's they have, but to look at this directly. But this is kind of an indirect thing that we're looking at this study, and we're indirectly inferring that there's a good possibility that vegans will have less dementia later on. Other factors for dementia, by the way, are exercise is very important, to prevent the dementia, eating lots of fruits and vegetables, not smoking, being non-smokers, not drinking alcohol. All of those things are protective for your brain, okay, in terms of dementia as well. All right. And also exercising your brain. Those people who do more education and actively use their brain and do a diverse kind of social, cultural, and intellectual activities will always have less dementia as well. That's a very protective thing. So there's a growing number of vegans. Canada, USA, UK, India even is starting. And even Kaiser Permanente, this is a very interesting thing. Kaiser Permanente, which is the largest healthcare organization in the United States, I think it's the biggest one, covering quite a few million people in this private healthcare system, is recommending vegan diet to all of their patients based on these kind of findings that we're getting. And they're doing it. I mean, they're an organization that is that's trying to make money. And they're basically saying they just know that we're going to save money if we do this, right? And so it's interesting that they're not necessarily a HIMSA organization, but they just know that they're going to save money. So let's talk about Ayurvedic medicine, okay? Because most of us from Indian background, and people often have the question, they always ask, okay, our tradition tells us to be vegetarian, but why does it tell us to eat ghee and milk all the time? Why is that so important, okay? Let's address that and talk about what modern Ayurvedic medicine could look like. Because now for thousands of years, Ayurvedic medicine's been there. Can anybody tell me what's the #1 cause of death for thousands of years in India and around the world? What's the #1 cause of death? What's that? You can shout it. Heart attack, no. For thousands of years, what's the #1 cause of death? It's not a heart attack. There was probably hardly any heart attacks for thousands of years. What is it? Diabetes, no. For thousands of years, probably hardly anybody had diabetes. What's that? Starvation. Malnutrition was the biggest cause of death around the world, and it's still the biggest cause of death for some groups of some populations in the world today. Malnutrition is the biggest cause of death. Has anybody here heard this word, like you catch a cold, you'll catch your death? Right? Oh, you'll catch your death if you go outside in the cold, you're not dressed properly. That's because it used to happen. People would get a cold and they would die from a simple cold. Right now we get a cold, I get a cold a couple times a year. Some people take a day off work, some people don't take a day off work, it's no big deal. You drink some, herbal teas, whatever, and you get better, right? But people used to die because your immune system has to fight that virus. For your immune system to fight that virus, it has to make antibodies. All kinds of cells, you have a few cells that make those antibodies, have to divide and become from a few cells into millions of cells to fight that particular virus. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of protein and a lot of calories in order for your body to get an immune response and fight against any virus. And people would die if they were malnourished, just from a simple cold virus and many other bacterial illnesses. They would just die. Their body couldn't fight it. And children need protein and energy to grow. If they're not getting enough protein and energy, because food in the world, in so many places, in so many times throughout history, was scarce. Okay, and you had to work really hard to get it. Okay, and it wasn't always there, depending on the season, depending on different problems. So you would die. And in those days, if you gave a child a lot of milk, they would grow. And if you had a sick person, you gave them milk and ghee, which is high in energy, high in protein, all of a sudden they could be cured. Because their immune system turns on and fights the disease, and that person is able to survive. In the West, what do they give you if you're sick? What kind of soup? Chicken soup. And what does chicken soup have? It has protein and has a lot of chicken fat. Same thing. It's protein and fat. Around the world, people, if you go to some place in the world, they'll value all kinds of different meats and animal foods. In China, what do they value as being traditionally an amazing food that's almost sacred in some places? What is it? What? Locusts. I heard locusts. What else? It's a plant food. Soybeans. Okay? Soybeans. And foods from soybeans is praised in some of those countries and valued because for thousands of years, people know it's a high source of two things. What? Protein and calories. There's a lot of fat. There's a lot of fat in soybeans as well as a lot of calories, and there's a lot of protein. So you can get the same benefit from a plant food. You just need protein and calories. It doesn't matter where it comes from, but it will help children grow. It will help you fight off disease. Okay? And that's why Ayurvedic medicine, where people were vegetarian, this was something that was very concentrated energy and protein. But, so Western, traditions, right? Chicken soup, okay? But nowadays, we have different problems. Back in the old days, for hundreds of years, thousands of years, people didn't live till they were 80 years old. Most people died probably when they were in the 40s and 50s, and that was it, right? But now, and they didn't have heart disease or diabetes, so they didn't have that problem. They weren't consuming all this much food. People are pretty skinny, mostly, right? But now we want to live till we're 80, and we live till we're 90. And when we're 80 and when we're 90, we want to play with our great-grandkids, we want to climb mountains, we want to drive around our cars, and we want to do all these things. So what helps us get to that stage? Because we have a different set of concerns right now. We're not just trying to survive, we're trying to live long and healthy and amazing lives. So here are the 4 vegan food groups. Let's talk about that, okay? There's pulses, so beans, lentils, dals. Indian people are very familiar with those, okay? Whole grains, okay? Vegetables and fruits. Okay, now there's a 5th food group that's nuts and healthy fats. Okay, I'm going to add that in there too. I should put that in the picture. Humans evolved from primates, and primates are basically vegan, most of them. All right? They don't drink milk. If it was natural for an animal to drink milk, right? Do you ever see a monkey going to a cow and sucking on a cow? Right? Do you ever see a human going and sucking on a cow to get milk? No. Do you think that's kind of a nice thing to do? Would anybody like to do that? You know why you wouldn't? Because it's not natural. We use technology, okay? To hunt, to get meat, to get milk, and all these things. We use all kinds of advanced technology to do those things, right? So we are technivores, but we're not omnivores. Okay, we use technology to herd, domesticate these animals, and then find ways of milking them, collecting the milk, boiling the milk, because you get diseases if you don't boil or pasteurize the milk in most cases. Okay, people used to get tuberculosis and all kinds of things through milk that was not boiled properly. So all kinds of diseases, and then we use technology. Fire is one of those technology, and all kinds of things we did to domesticate animals. Right? So we are naturally herbivores. Otherwise, it'd be very comfortable going to some kind of a cow or buffalo or a goat or any other animal and trying to suck on that animal. But obviously that's ridiculous. So where do we get our protein? This is Timothy Bradley. When he's not vegan, but when he fights, when he's training for his fight, he goes for vegan for like a few months to get into top condition, and then he fights. Okay. So, okay, let's talk about protein. So what are the high protein foods? Beans, lentils, sprouted lentils like mung beans, we've sprouted our mung, that kind of stuff is very, very, very high in protein. Those are the lentils, pulses, beans are the heavy hitters for protein, okay? Soy milk, tofu, you get these veggie hot dogs, vegan hot dogs and stuff like that. Now, those things can be very high in protein. You have to choose which one. But also whole grains, things like oatmeal and rice, that, quinoa is there now too. These things also have about 10% protein. Have you ever heard you have to complement your protein? You have to put this thing together with this thing and then it makes a complete protein? Has anybody ever heard that? Yes? No? Okay. Well, if you have heard it, it's false. That's an old idea. It's about all vegetable foods have a complete protein. Now the protein in beans and lentils and soy and things like that is a little bit better because if one of the amino acids is a bit higher than compared to some of the other foods, but they all have a complete protein. Okay. So that's where you want to get most of your protein from, these things. And I know that Gujarati diet compared to, let's say, Punjabi diet. I come from Canada. I live in Brampton, in part of Toronto where there's a lot of Punjabi people. We have a lot of Punjabi food. I know if you have, Gujarati dal, it's very watery. If you have Punjabi dal, it's very thick. If you have, rajma in Punjab, you eat a big plate of rajma, whereas, Gujarati people might have a little bit. So Gujarati food is generally low in protein, okay? It's generally pretty low in protein. So when we eat our beans and lentils, we want to eat a lot of them, okay? Because they are very important, not only for protein, but also for iron and calcium, all kinds of other good things that you get from them, various types of fiber, many things. And we want to eat a lot of these kind of things. And soy milk is basically, soy bean is just a bean, it's a pulse, okay? But it happens to be, of all the pulses, the one that's highest in protein. And a lot of other good things, perhaps even slightly better than the other ones, according to research, but they're all good though, really, all right? And so soy milk in this busy age, if we're replacing milk, which milk for Gujaratis is one of the major sources of protein, now if you're taking that away, you have to put something back. You can't just take it away and not put something in its place. Because the protein in the milk is very important, same with the calcium, so we want to put back, and I recommend everybody soy milk is one of the best solutions. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but get the fortified soy milk with B12, calcium, and then high in protein as well. So the protein requirements, how much protein do you need? We need about 0.65 grams per kilogram of body weight, up to 0.8 grams, or maybe you can just say 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. That's not a huge amount. It's easy to get, but I know a lot of Gujarati people in their food, they don't even get half of that amount. And there's a lot of people who are so worried about protein, they get 2 or 3 times that amount, which is probably not necessary and may not be good for you either. Okay? So we want to sort of be careful. You can read the ingredients of the things that you are eating in terms of the whole grains and beans and other things like that. Look how much protein, and sort of calculate how much protein you're getting in a day. Look at your body weight, and you can sort of see how much you need. Okay? If people are pregnant, woman's pregnant, or they're breastfeeding, or children who are growing, they want to go a little bit on the higher end. Go to 0.8 or 1 gram per kilogram for those people. Same with elderly people. Elderly people may benefit from a little bit higher amount. It doesn't mean super high, it just means like 0.8, 1 gram per kilogram may be better for elderly people too. Okay? So if you go a little on the higher side, it seems to be beneficial. All right? Now, I want to also emphasize, I'll come back to the slide, whole grains. Gujaratis and a lot of people, we eat white rice, we use white flour and white bread and all this white stuff. I tell people not to eat white stuff, okay? All right? Don't eat white people either, that's don't eat people, But, salt is white, sugar is white, starchy stuff is white bread, white flour, and potatoes are white. You can have some potatoes if you want to, but too many of those things is too starchy, right? And so you want to avoid that kind of stuff. Now the only white thing I make an exception for is soy milk. Soy milk is white, and it's a good one. Maybe a couple of other things that are white you can still eat as well. Okay. Now the one nutrient that people get from animal products is vitamin B12. Okay. Vitamin B12 is not made by an animal's body. So now people generally get their B12 from animal products, from milk or eggs or meat or those kind of things, right? That's where they get it. But where does the animal get it from? If it is a cow that's not drinking milk from somebody else, how's the cow getting, or not eating meat, cows are generally vegetarian, how are they getting B12? So a cow or any wild animal that's a herbivore, a deer or whatever, when they're eating and drinking from the wild, they're eating from the ground, they're drinking water from the pond, bacteria, there are certain types of bacteria that make B12. And humans, if we were drinking water from the pond and just pulling something out of the ground and eating it without washing it, we're always going to get some B12 as well. You don't need that much, but we probably get that. But now we purify our water, we filter our water, there's chlorine in the water, so there's no bacteria, it's clean, and we wash all of our food, we're not going to get B12 that way. So what we need to do is we need to get it from something else. Now people generally get it from the animal foods that they eat, but the milk that you drink, all of that milk, 99% of it comes from a factory farm. And those cows are fed food, not eating from the ground. Most of them are fed foods, that are farm foods and given to them. And the cows aren't getting B12. So they give B12 supplements to the cows. So if you're having milk, really it's just coming from B12 supplement that the cow ate and it's coming out in the milk or in the flesh or whatever. Okay? But what we can do is we cut out the animal. We can just take B12 supplements. Okay, and also drink soy milk and those kind of things that has B12 inside of it. We'll talk a little bit more about supplements as well. But if you're low in B12, we should get our B12 tested, let's say once in a while, maybe once a year, you test it, and then if it's good, then maybe every couple of years or so forth, you can test your B12. And if it's low, doctors like to give injections. Injections are not necessary in 99.9% of the people. The doctors mostly don't know about B12, they give injections. What you really need to do is take a supplement. Okay? Take 1,000 microgram supplement, they're very easily available in the market, and you just take one pill. If you're low in B12, just take it every day for a few weeks. Or you can just, if you're okay in B12, just take a pill a couple of times a week of 1,000 micrograms, maybe 2-3 times a week, and you're going to be fine in your B12. Okay? Some people will be fine just with soy milk, but it's not reliable because we don't know. The 10-15% of people just don't absorb it very well. So it's nice to take a supplement. That way we know everybody's getting it. Or at least get your blood tested. If it's low despite everything else, then you're going to take that supplement. Okay? And that's very important, especially if somebody's pregnant or going to get pregnant or breastfeeding or something like that. And for children, it's very important. Very important. So we don't want to be lackadaisical about this. There are all kinds of things that B12 is very important for, and that's the one thing we have to 100% guarantee that we're getting enough B12. Calcium and iron. Okay, I'm going to just say one thing. I'm going to use the word Google. Google vegan calcium, Google vegan iron. A lot of the same foods have both. So all your legumes and soya and dark green vegetables and broccoli and kale. Broccoli and kale are amazing. They have so much calcium and iron and it's very easily absorbed. Okay, prune juice, molasses, whole grains have calcium and iron. Raisins, nuts, seeds, all nuts and seeds are amazing for you. They have calcium and iron, amongst so many other benefits as well. So eat a broad variety of these foods, and most of us are going to have enough iron and enough calcium just from that. Now, to get, again, like we're saying, we want to live now till we're like 90 years old, and we don't want osteoporosis, right? So getting a little extra calcium is good. The recommendations from like the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons is something like 700 milligrams of calcium, and that's what we generally need. The dairy industry in North America tells us we need like much more than that, but that's not true. They're just trying to promote their product. If you're getting about 700 milligrams, that's, for the vast majority of us, that's a really good number, okay? And a great way of getting that is soy milk, because if you drink soy milk, it's fortified soy milk. There's 250 milligrams in 1 cup. So you drink a couple of cups and you've met most of your calcium needs for that day. I tend to drink like 3 cups of that a day anyways. Okay. Vitamin D. Now most supplements are not needed, okay? There's all kinds of supplements that you look at. B12 is the one that you definitely need. And then other supplements are, vitamin C and multivitamins and all that stuff is generally all garbage, which creates expensive urine. And as many of them are shown to actually have a slight increase in the death rate by taking those vitamins, by taking long-term vitamin C, vitamin E, and all those kind of things. There's studies that show that, that you don't need them and there might be a slight increase in mortality. But vitamin D3, according to some sort of more recent research, we think it's likely beneficial. Okay, there may be some benefit in cancer and some other things like that. A slight decrease in those kind of things. So it's a good thing to get. The best way to get it is sunshine, but a lot of us are dark skinned. We live in a cold place. We go outside. We're not running around naked. We're wearing clothes and hats and scarves, So we're not getting a lot of sunshine throughout the year. Some people, like children who are babies, they don't get outside at all. And elderly people who may have a disability, they're inside all the time. So they may get low B12. They're not getting any sunshine. So you can consider taking vitamin D3. It's an optional thing, probably beneficial. We don't have 100% recommendation on it, but it's probably beneficial. I'm starting to think about taking it myself. And for certain people, we know it's even more important, as I mentioned. Okay, so especially pregnant and breastfeeding women, they want to get enough vitamin D for their baby as well. That's very important too. So vitamin D, 3, and now you can get vegan vitamin D3. It used to always come from animal products, but now you can get a vegan version. So just look it up on the online, and there's, you can take 800, 1,000, 2,000 a day, something like that would be good. Vitamin C is very good to help you absorb iron and calcium. So when we eat lentils, legumes, and all those kind of things, when we're cooking our beans and our lentils and things like that, and kale, all those things of vitamin C that you're going to Google, when you eat vegetables that have all kinds of colors on them, okay, so green and red and yellow and orange, all of these things contain vitamin C. It's not just oranges and grapefruits and lemons, all these vegetables contain vitamin C. Again, Google vegan, vegetables, vitamin C, and you'll find things like red peppers and green peppers have even more than oranges. Now, broccoli and kale have calcium, iron, but they also have vitamin C inside the same vegetable, so it's kind of like a superfood. It gives you a lot of things, and it helps you absorb the vitamin C, calcium that's right there. There's a vegetarian, the Vegan Society, right, of the UK. They produce this vitamin that has B12, 25 micrograms a day, which is, it's good. It's more than what you need in a day. It's going to be, for most people, that's going to be a good amount. Vitamin D, 800 international units, and iodine it also contains as well. Those are very important things. There's a few other things there, but I think those are the most important ones, okay? And so that's a great way of getting your vitamin B12 and your vitamin D on a daily basis. And the Vegan Society is very diligent. They work really hard to do the best research they can to try to make an optimal thing. So I recommend, when I'm in Toronto or any city that I'm in, if there's a vegan society there or a vegetarian society, I encourage people to become a member of it. Because, most of us, it's in our philosophy, but it's nice to join the people who are over here that are trying to promote these things that are also part of our values, and we should be part of those things, right? So it's a really good thing to join these guys, and also their thing is good too. You don't have to buy this stuff. You can buy the B12, as I mentioned, 1,000 micrograms, and have it twice a week or something. You can get your vitamin D you can order vitamin D, vegan vitamin D online as well. That's another way of doing it. Iodine is usually supplied in the dairy supply in UK. In North America, we get iodine in our salt. But over here, if you're eliminating dairy and the iodine is through the dairy, then you're not going to get enough iodine. That can lead to thyroid problems. Okay, so what you want to do is get a thyroid supplement. So this has your iodine, okay, or you can find in some places you can get salt with iodine in it and use that salt. Or you can buy soy milk. There's Alpro soy milk that's for 1 to 3 years of age that also has iodine. So it's for kids, but you can drink it too, and it contains iodine. But one way or the other, look after your iodine, because just, naturally a lot of people, So iodine, we talked about that, okay. And we're just coming back to soy milk. It's just a very fast way of getting protein, calcium, and there's a lot of, there's different research showing that soy decreases prostate cancer, soy decreases breast cancer, soy decreases heart disease, improves your cholesterol, and also soy is found to be better than milk in increasing bone strength. There's studies that show that amongst people who have enough nutrition, having too much milk actually decreases and weakens their bones. But for those people who are malnourished, if you're malnourished and not getting enough protein calories, then milk will strengthen your bones. But if you're getting enough protein and calories and all that kind of stuff, then milk, and getting enough calcium, then milk tends to then have some other bad effects on the bones if people are drinking too much milk. But soy doesn't have that effect. Soy, and get soy with calcium in it, it's going to be better for your bones too. So it's really, really good food, okay? There's all these tofu hot dogs and all those kind of things as well. One of the good ones I think is tofurkey, because they have high protein, low fat. They're all a little bit salty, but still, these are good foods for convenience and kids and those kind of things as well. There may be the whole food soy milk, or eating the soybeans themselves in the form of soybeans that you can steam edamame. That's even better, but these things are also pretty good. Okay. And why else is soy good? Okay. In order to make animal products, it takes much more land and much more water. And in this world today where land and water, where there's so much deforestation, environmental degradation, eating pulses, eating beans and lentils and legumes takes a fraction of the amount of water and land. It's so much better for the environment, and it also brings nitrogen back into the soil as well. And soy is one of the, is the chief among all these legumes. So having things like soy milk and soy foods are really, really good. In addition to the health benefits, they're great for providing food for the world in a very efficient way that has a less environmental impact. Okay. But as I said, get the soy milk or whatever with the supplementation. Now you don't have to have soy. Some people don't like it or whatever. Just eat lots of beans and legumes of all the other kinds. They're probably almost as good. Okay. The next food group is the fats, nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds, peanuts, and all kinds of other seeds, not the salty, sugary kind, but just ones that are a little bit more natural, are very good for you in terms of helping reduce heart disease and also reduce certain types of cancer, and also showing that people who eat them probably live a little bit longer. Okay, and the good oils are like olive oil, canola, which we call canola in Canada, but rapeseed oil we call it over here, and flax or linseed oil. Those are the oils that are the best for you. Sunflower, safflower, and all the other vegetable oils are thought to be not as good. The research is a little bit hazy, but these ones seem to be the best. Okay, and some of these like rapeseed oil, canola oil, flax oil, soybeans, they also have some plant omega-3s, which theoretically be good. And for nuts, there's chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, peanuts, walnuts, all these things are packed with all kinds of goodness. Okay, so make sure you eat some of those as well. Now, omega-3s used to be very famous. A few years back, they said omega-3, it's better for this, better for that, it's especially good for your heart. All of that research, when they did further research, they found that it was bogus. There was no benefit for the heart, there was no benefit for depression, there was no benefit for any of these things. Once they did bigger studies, they found that it was not beneficial. And in fact, in some cases, it might have been even detrimental. Now, some more recent stuff is coming out saying that, well, maybe there's one benefit. It might be beneficial for your brain. Okay, so for the brain of children, so women who are pregnant and breastfeeding and little children, having some omega-3s may be good for them. Now we focus mostly on the omega-3s that come from the ocean, so they're always telling people to eat fish, right? But fish is devastating the environment. And fish is also full of mercury and PCBs and toxins that are very, very neurotoxic and have other toxic effects as well. But fish get their omega-3s from algae. Fish, the smallest fish, eat plants, they eat algae. That's where the original omega-3 comes from. And we can get omega-3 from algae, and it's free of toxin. That's the only source that's 100% free of mercury and PCBs and all that stuff. So this is something that people can consider for their brains, for their long-term health of their brains. It's an optional thing. It may well be beneficial, and it's likely beneficial for children and pregnant women, or again for the baby's brain development. Okay, but get the one that's toxin-free, and it's more ecological, and it's not going to hurt any animals either. You see, there's these brands right here. There's one over here, an example. It's an empty bottle, but Opti3 is one that you can get that is made from algae. The bad fats. Okay, what about the bad fats? Trans fat. If you take oil and you fry with that oil, especially you take unsaturated oil, polyunsaturated like canola oil, and you fry like you're making gantia or something like that all day, or French fries, and all day you're frying in that oil, you're going to develop a lot of trans fats in that oil. If you just do wagar, tarka, whatever you call it, a little bit, you're not going to create a lot of trans fats there, but when you're frying something for a long time, you're going to create trans fats, and those are really bad. And a lot of foods have trans fats in it. If it says hydrogenated something or other, like margarine is okay. You get the soft margarine like B-cell. Do you get B-cell over here? B-cell? No? Vitalite. You get margarine made out of canola oil or margarine made out of olive oil. You use your healthy fats, and not hydrogenated, so it's going to be soft. And those kind of margarines are okay. You want to eat them in, there's some benefits to eating them. You don't want to go crazy. I'm not saying eat lots of it. You still want to stay low fat, but having some of those may be good. Okay, but when you're frying, it's not good. Cholesterol is not good. Any animal fat, including dairy, butter, lots and lots of cholesterol and saturated fat, that's not good. When you make ghee, you're heating the butter. Why do they make ghee in India? Because the butter is going to go bad. After like a few hours, even in the heat, it can go rancid. But when you make ghee out of it, you boil it, you sterilize it, and you boil out all the water, then it's going to remain overnight or maybe even a few days. It can last without refrigeration. Right? That's why people make ghee. But and in the old days, like I said, it was good for you, but now we have different set of problems. We don't want to eat ghee. Ghee is found to have even more carcinogenic effect and more heart disease effect than regular butter. Okay? Which is just the same as the fat from the body of an animal. No difference, really. Okay? Canola oil, olive oil, flax oil, we talked about that. Avoid coconut oil and palm oil, because they have a lot of saturated fats. Now, on the internet, it's saying everywhere that you eat coconut oil, it's really great for you, but there's really no research about it. It's just an internet thing, okay? It may be good for you, we don't know. It may be not as bad. Maybe it's a saturated fat, so it may be worse than these other fats. Maybe it's not as bad as animal fats. We just don't really know yet. But I would say, if you're using it, use it in small quantities. Some things are nice for coconut oil, but avoid it. Avoid eating too much. Superfoods. We already talked lentils and beans are superfoods. Soy milk is a superfood. Those things are good. Nuts and seeds. So many, independent things that are showing its benefit. Broccoli and kale. But really, like I said, you want to eat all of the whole grains. Brown rice. Those things are good. Eat your fruits and eat your vegetables. eat a variety, eat the rainbow, eat all the different colors of different foods. Those are all good. All of these things, and eat some things that are like, some people ask if you should eat raw food all the time. Yes, we should eat lots of raw food. Every day we should have some raw food. Do you have to have 100% raw food? No, there's benefit for cooked food too. I think you should mix it. But don't overcook food. I know a lot of Indian people, they cook the food until there's no color left anymore. I have friends with Chinese, right? And one friend, she was telling me, like, you Indian people, when we Chinese people, we cook the food, you can still see the color. When you Indian people cook it, the color is all gone. It doesn't look like the vegetable anymore. When we make things kachupaku, right? Semi-cooked, right? That's kind of a sweet spot where we can release more nutrients without burning them all. Okay? So think about that as well. All right? Don't eat this stuff, we talked about it. This might be vegan. I bring samosas to my hospital to the nurses, and I'm thinking like, geez, I feel guilty, but I know you all like it, but all right. Now, some people become vegan and they lose too much weight because they're eliminating all these foods, and now they're getting too skinny and they're hungry and they're feeling weak. Use your common sense. Put more beans, put more lentils, put more soy milk, put a little bit more healthy fat, eat some more carbohydrates, whole grains, increase your calories, make your food heavier if you have that problem. Okay, because some people get too skinny. Some people, they become vegan and every day they're eating pasta 3 times a day and they're gaining all kinds of weight. Again, use your brain. Don't eat pasta 3 times a day, use a smaller amount. Get more fruits and more vegetables, okay? And some more of the protein foods without a lot of too much fat. According to your situation, adjust the vegan diet using the healthy choices to make it really good for you, okay? So use your common sense, that's very, very important, okay? And yeah, okay, so, and a lot of people may need to eat a little bit more. They're not eating as many calories, so they have to eat a little bit more volume to make it up. Depends. See your doctor, not because vegans have to see your doctor, but everybody should just get their general checkup. We're all trying to live till we're 90 and we're healthy, or 100 or 110, whatever you're trying to do, So see your doctor once in a while. Get that yearly checkup. Check your iron, check your, vitamin D status maybe, but your B12 status for sure. Check your B12 status, okay? And just the regular stuff that you check. Your doctor will generally be surprised if you're vegan and a healthy vegan diet, your blood test will be better than average. Some people may still have high cholesterol, okay, or a little bit high blood pressure. I'm not saying that vegan diet is going to make you bulletproof, but it gives you 1, 2, 3 steps of betterment. Sometimes 4 steps of betterment. Sometimes people have drastic changes as well. But not everybody will. But we're going to have some benefits, but it's not a failure if you still have some high blood pressure, a little bit of high cholesterol, but the thing is you're going to be better off this way, for sure. You're going to be better than you would be otherwise, okay? So get your iron tested, get all these things tested, and if they're good year to year to year, you don't have to test. I got my blood test for B12 a couple of times, and I haven't done it for a few years, because I know with eating the same foods, I'm going to be okay. Maybe this year I'll get it tested again, all right? But, generally, try to be regular, at least for a certain amount of time. Pregnancy and lactation, babies and children can indeed be vegan. You just have to pay attention to the things that I was talking about. Your protein, your B12, your calcium, your folate, your vitamin D, iron, omega-3s. Do all that kind of stuff. And that book, Vegan for Life, that I was talking about, has all the guidelines for people of all ages and things like that. Really good recommendation. So it's a great one to really go by. Okay, educate yourself a little bit and educate other people too, because it's a great way that we can make things better for a lot of people. Vegan food is tasty. Try different restaurants, try different recipes. You can adapt vegan food for anything. All Indian food can be made vegan. All kinds of things that we thought we needed milk for or eggs for in Western food, in Indian foods, we have vegan versions for everything. And we can make healthy vegan versions too, okay? So, we should experiment and then share these things with other people as well. It's a great way to improve people's health by inspiring them, okay? And, we want an Indian population in the future that's not suffering from so much diabetes and obesity and heart disease. And we can get that. And this is one of the major things that's really going to help us. Okay? We have great examples of animals who are vegan and they're doing fine. We can do that too. People like Bill Gates, is vegan now for environmental reasons and because he's trying to feed the world. And he realizes if I'm vegan, I'm having, with less land and water, I'm getting more food for myself and having less environmental impact, causing less climate change and causing less of these problems, and also making more food available for other people, okay? And, these are our fellows that are also promoting, vegan diet or vegetarian diet. If they were there here now, they'd be vegan. Now let me see, that's the end of this presentation. Now I'm gonna go through one more presentation really quick, okay? It's just gonna take 5 minutes, and it's another, Now, a lot of people, somebody asked me earlier today, said, if I can get milk from a cow that's going to be treated well, then it's going to be okay. How many people, what happens to cows in the UK? After you get your milk for a few years, what happens to that cow? Slaughtered. What percentage of cows here are slaughtered? 100%. Every single cow is slaughtered here and in Canada and the US. If you're getting your milk, that cow is being used for a certain purpose, and when we get that milk, enough of that milk, and the cow's getting a bit older, the cow's going to be slaughtered 100% of the time. What about India? In India, it's better? Who thinks it's better in India? Yeah, nobody? Yeah, okay, a few people think maybe it's better. Okay, let's talk about the Indian situation, okay? Because this is a very, hard thing for me to explain to people in India. And I've been working on trying to do that for a while, so I created this presentation and been studying the issue over there, okay? So dairy production, cow slaughter in India, where that's Jeevdaya, which means compassion towards life. You don't know what Jeevdaya means. And a scientific understanding of the issues facing cattle, looking at the math of dairy production, okay? So now, right now in the world, which country has the number one beef export in the world? The number one, it's India, right? And which country has the second largest leather production in the world? Right? It's the first maybe for square, for raw materials, maybe the first, okay? So why does this happen? Here's some stats, just showing that basically, the red line on the top there is India, it's taken over as the world's number one beef exporter, okay? And this red line on the bottom shows what percentage of the total herd of India is legally slaughtered according to statistics. In 2013, it's getting above 12-13% of the total population of Indian cattle is slaughtered every year. And the population of Indian cattle, it's very interesting, it's very high. It's going up to more than 100 million. This is crores over here. These are millions, right? So it's going over 300 million cattle are in India. That's a massive population. It's like a quarter of the human population. There's one cow or buffalo for every for every 4 humans in this country, pretty much. Okay. So traditionally, people revere the cow, especially in Hindu culture, right? But this is the kind of transport that's happening all over in India, and this is the kind of slaughter that's happening. Has anybody been to a slaughterhouse in UK? Have you ever seen a slaughterhouse over here? You don't see them very often, right? Same in India, you don't see them, but they're there. Okay? And in Indian politics, it's a big issue now. Some people don't want to slaughter, like Narendra Modi, and some of these people, they don't want to slaughter these cows because it's sacred to them. But a lot of business people do want to increase in beef production because they export it to make money. So let's look at, to understand this problem, let's look at the root of the problem. And let's try to get rid of our biases. So let's look at some facts. Indian cow lives about 20 to 25 years. If you take really good care of the cow, that's how long the cow will live. And a cow in India can be made pregnant at the age of about 1.5 years. At that time, she starts menstruating and she can be made pregnant. Milk only is produced after the baby is born. That is for all mammals. I never used to think about that, but the milk only comes after baby is born. Milk production starts high, and after 6 to 8 months, on average, starts going low. Just like different humans, different cows are different. Some cows, maybe after 3-4 months, their milk production will go down. Some maybe go for more than a year, 2 years. Depends, just luck. And after 3 months of producing milk, the cow can be made pregnant again. So you have a cycle that if a cow delivers a baby and after 3 months of milk production is impregnated again, then 9 months of pregnancy, after 12 months, she will have another baby. So every 12 months you get another baby, and you get about 6-7 months of milk production every year. Okay, so baby every 12 months. So let's do the math. Okay, let's say I'm a farmer. I want to start a business of having cows. I get 10 cows and I have this land. I get this land over here, okay? I have 10 cows, and maybe I have 1 bull, or maybe I use artificial insemination in order to impregnate those cows. That's the 2 techniques that are commonly used. Okay? And even in villages, they're using artificial insemination. They use a cow, or people. So I have 10. First of all, they're all impregnated, and then after 9 months, a baby is born, and milk production starts. My business is now starting. I'm selling milk. I'm starting to make money. Okay? So I have 20 now. Now the thing thing is, when your babies are born, they're going to be 50% male, 50% female on average. So like 5 boys, 5 girls on average. The second year, the same thing happens. They're all impregnated, babies are born, you're getting more milk production. Now we have 30, a population of 30 now. And we do the same thing, we have 40 population. Now, the next year, what I'm going to do is the first 5 babies that were born, we're going to get them pregnant too. So we can expand our business. I probably could have done this 1 year earlier, but just for convenience, maybe I left it for a couple years. Now, I have 15 cattle that are producing milk. My production of dairy has increased. My business is making more money now, right? Because people in India drink a lot of milk. And the following year, 20 of them can be impregnated. I have a total population of 75, and my next year, I can impregnate another 5 of the babies, and basically, I have a total population of 100 animals now. That's after 6 years, if I did everything very perfectly. So let's see. After 6 years, I went from 10 cattle to 100. 90 babies are born. 45 are boys and 45 are girls. Now, the boys are useless. What am I going to do with the boys? They're another mouth to feed. It costs me a lot of money. It's cost me thousands of rupees per year to feed each individual. So I'm losing money if I keep them. What am I going to do with those boys? We don't need those boys. So right now, that cattle herd in India is over 300 million. Approximately 70% of them, more than 70% of them, are female, actually. You know, and the males are slaughtered at a much faster rate. Okay? So they're useless. Mostly, they're going to be killed. Now, the land that I have only has room for about 30 animals. But I have 45 females plus 10 moms, 55. So maybe I can squeeze a few in, maybe I can keep 40, but I still have to get rid of maybe 10, 15, right? So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to have to get rid of 10, 15, one way or the other. I'm going to have to get rid of it. And so this is what we call exponential growth. Math, simple term for it, exponential growth, right? The population, if you impregnate all the females and they have babies, every 3 or 4 years, or maybe 2 to 3 years even, the whole population is going to double of cattle. You know, from 300 million to 600 million to more than a billion in like 2 to 3 years. Obviously, that can't happen. There's not enough land in India, right? So what happens is that in India, because the population is growing slightly year by year, by a few percentage points, but roughly, when 300 million are born every, let's say, 2.5 years or whatever, 300 million are going to have to die. And so you can roughly estimate the amount of death of cattle in India. And that's why India has the largest export of beef, because a lot of people don't eat it, so they export it, right? Even to feed all these animals, India's already cut more than 80% of its forests, and to raise animals and feed animals takes even more land to probably than feeding humans. Cattle can drink 50 to 100 liters of water a day as well. The banjapurs that Jains and some Hindus run are full. They may have a total in India of about 2, 3, 4, 500,000 animals in banjapurs, but they're not accommodating 300 million animals every 3 years or so. A lot of people in India believe that, everything's close to the banjapur, the cows are safe, but it's not true. The banjapurs are full. It doesn't really, they may accommodate a few animals, but then they have to get rid of a few animals too. And India has the highest demand for dairy products in the entire world. And now there's going to be more and more factory farming in India. Okay? So basically, in buffaloes as well. Buffaloes, there's all kinds of laws that protect cows. There's more laws protecting cows, but very few laws protect buffaloes. And Hindus may care about the cow, but they don't care about the buffaloes that much, generally speaking, like by the tradition, So they get slaughtered much, much more. And now in Kutch, I work in Kutch every year in a hospital, in an area where there's a hospital kind of run by Jains. And I'd be going around there and talking to some farmers who have, a lot of people have their own cow. I mean, a few cows in their house, it's very nice. And I say, well, what do you do with the cow when the baby is born if you don't have enough baby? Well, we give it away. That's what they say, we give it away. I said, who do you give it away to? Sometimes they give it away to a family member who has a cow, but sometimes they just give it away to some people who need a cow. I said, who are those people? And they're like, I don't know. Now, if you ask a little bit more deeper, with some of the people who are kind of in the business of doing this, they don't like to admit it. But there's some people, you know how there's kind of classes and people, some of the people who have these cattle and stuff, they can be a little bit more poor in some cases. But they give it away. They sell the calf, they sell the baby calf for 500 rupees. 500 rupees, that's like $20. I don't know how many pounds that is. It's like maybe 10 pounds or 12 pounds or something like that. That's how much they sell that cow. And the cow is slaughtered illegally, and the meat is sold as bakra meat, because bakra, there's no law banning bakra meat. And people are kind of ashamed of this. They do like their animals, but they have to do this because they can't keep it all. And we know all these cows are also in the streets eating garbage, right? Because there's too many. And a lot of times the cow wanders into somebody's field and is eating like what's growing in that field. And that's going to put that farmer out of business who's growing wheat, and the cows are coming and eating everything. They can eat all. So they poison the cows sometimes. Okay? They don't tell anybody, but they do it because it's killing their business. Or what happens is that people round them up and take them and slaughter them illegally. There's all kinds of illegal slaughterhouses. The statistics from the government only count really for illegal slaughter, right? So 300 million being born, 300 million being died. I went to some village where they tie the baby up and they just don't feed it for a few days. They don't give it any water, and then it dies and they say, one baby up. You know? That's what they say. So this is what's happening in India, okay? And, so if anybody thinks that there's a possibility of using animals for milk in a way that will preserve animals, it is impossible. Because the only way you can get milk is to make them pregnant over and over and over again. That's the only way you can get milk. And you're always going to run into these problems about numbers. Okay? So I think that's, all you can do. I think the solution there also is in India to go vegan, because there's a lot of environmental problems, land, water shortages. To grow all that food, to feed these animals, then feed humans, is not as efficient as growing things like lentils and beans and pulses and soybeans and having soy milk and those kind of things, which ultimately will be healthier for people, because even there, poor people are eating so much of this stuff that they're getting diabetes and heart attacks too. Even in the village, they're poor, but they're overweight, and they're getting the same problems. So again, the same things can help people over there. Okay, so that's about it. All right, I hope I haven't gone too much over time. And what we can have some questions, discussion, and those kind of things. Oh, one thing I want to show as well. Where is it? Sorry, you want to show some final slides? Yeah? Okay, we'll do it after Q&A. Okay.